This is Literati. I am your guide into the world of African literature and stories, showcasing the brightest African storytellers, poets, and writers, and giving a platform to the rising stars and the next generation of those who will give birth to our stories. And so on today's show, we celebrate the power of words and the people who use them to change the world. Today's guest is Brittle Paper's 2024 Literary Advocate of the Year, Tonye Faloughi-Ekezie. She's a Nigerian author, entrepreneur, and mother. Tonye is championing the representation of neurodivergency in children's literature and breaking barriers in publishing. Now, Tonye's groundbreaking work in children's literature has not only redefined representation, but also opened new doors for neurodivergent children and their families. Her books, starting with Ugo and Sim Sim, What is Down Syndrome, are celebrated for centering Black characters with disabilities, a first of its kind globally. From self-publishing struggles to creating Simone's Oasis, Tonye's journey is nothing short of inspiring. So let's talk about her work, her journey, and more. Tonye, many thanks for joining me on today's show.
Thanks for having me.
That's quite a resume, I will say.
I know, it sounds like I also have to kind of remind myself at times. I'm like, wow, this has been a busy 4 to 5 years.
It really has. Yeah. And so we have to start from the beginning in talking about, your inspiration. Mm-hmm. What inspired you to write Ugo and Sim Sim, the series?
Well, it's pretty simple. Ugo and Sim Sim are actually the name of my real children. I didn't even change the name.
What?
So Ugo is my son, mm-hmm. and Simone is my daughter, but we all call her Sim Sim or Sim Simma.
Sim Simma.
Yeah, and so it's literally inspired by them as a need that they had. My son, about 5 years ago, had just started to ask questions and just noticed that things were a little different. And when I needed to explain to him what Down syndrome was, I did a terrible, horrible job. In fact, I just ended up confusing him even more, right? Because you've got to think he was about 4 or 5 years old at the time.
Right.
And explaining to a child of that age, talking about chromosomes and trisomy, I didn't do a good job. So I had to kind of take a step back and think about how to really communicate in a way that he could understand. And we were always a book household. We are a book household, right? So I even read to both kids while I was pregnant with them. Mm. To be honest, it was more like a comfort thing for me. Mm. So there are always books that they can grab around the house, whether they could read at the time or not. So I just thought, books are going to be a great way to do this, right? Picture books, kids are really visual. And when I went to look, I didn't find anything at all. And what I found only had Caucasian characters, and even that, you couldn't continue with the character. It was like, okay, we've told you about Down syndrome, bye. And some of those books were really good. We really enjoyed the characters. So it was a little bit while later that I got the idea and just created a book, went to a local printing shop, printed 2 copies for them and gave to them.
Wow.
And that's really where it all began.
And this is now, this initial effort,
mm-hmm.
To surge into children's mm-hmm. literature, and it comes from a deeply personal one, like you just described, and just printing 2 copies mm-hmm. for Ugo and Sim Sim. Mm-hmm. It is now metamorphosed mm-hmm. into 5 book stories mm-hmm. from Ugo and Sim Sim. Yeah. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, sometimes I think just God is working in a way that you can't see. And really what was probably the hardest point in our lives actually has been the biggest blessing. Mm. So a friend of mine who I hadn't seen in a few years, because when my daughter was diagnosed with Down syndrome, she was also diagnosed with heart failure. And she was given about 6 months to live.
Right.
And so we kind of had to go where we could save her life, and that meant we were out of the country for a few years. I lost touch with quite a few people, but when I came back, a friend of mine, my sister told me, oh, your friend, Yemisi, she has a son with Downs. I was like, what? Really? I didn't know. So I got in touch with her, and she came over, and we really kind of shared our experiences. And she's really aligned. We've aligned ourselves together in our journey. She has a son, Alex, with Down syndrome, and she's amazing. She's more in the public eye than I am. She's an actress and a TV host, Missy Molu. But we were able to share that at home and just cry a bit. And my son came into the room and was like, oh, hi, Auntie Missy, how you doing? Oh, do you know Mom made me a book? And he went to go and bring the book and showed her. And she was the one who was like, but you know you can do something with this. Like, there's so many families like us. I need this. Think about other people who need to just see this and have this. And that's really what sparked me to think, okay, maybe I should send it to some publishers and see if anybody, because I didn't think anything about self-publishing. I was just, okay, let me try. And of course, I got turned down really harshly. And that's where I went into self-publishing, because it was clear that there were families, there were children, there were parents who needed this. Whatever the publishers and gatekeepers said, I knew that there were people who needed it, and so decided to take the self-publishing route on my own, and it was a very steep learning curve.
Which we're going to get into about your self-publishing journey, but I'd like to talk about the impact and the response you've gotten from these books, just to the families like Yemisi and her son Alex.
So I think for me, the most fulfilling feedback I get is from kids, right? So I might just be in a shop doing, my weekly shop, and some kid comes to me and is like, oh, Simon's mom, Ugo and Sim Sim, please, and when is your next book? They start harassing me for my next book, and I just think it's so sweet. But it's really when I get that feedback from kids, and note that most of the readers or the people who buy my books are actually from neurotypical families. So that means they don't have a child with special needs. They just see something in the story, right? So we're covering representation. Often we are represented as animals, or there's that supernatural element. And I wanted to say, I wanted to normalize the Black African family, to see a family, which is very unusual in children's literature. And so I was doing a book reading and a workshop with some kids. Sometimes I do creative writing workshop with kids, and one of the girls was a beautiful dark-skinned girl, and she came up to me and she just thanked me. She said, because I get teased about my skin color and everything, but in your workshop you've been saying that black is beautiful, the hair that grows out of your head is beautiful, and she felt really affirmed from the stories. And that's really the kind of impact that I would like to make to our target audience, which is kids, right? To understand there's room for uniqueness, for difference, learn about empathy and togetherness, but also be empowered in seeing yourself, because representation really matters. The importance of seeing yourself as a child reflected in what you're seeing back to yourself. It becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think it can't be underestimated, just that simple presence in a children's book. You can't underestimate it, because you have to think about the growth and the learning a child's mind is having, and all the things that are coming to them into their brain. Where's space for them? So you have to kind of have them realize, oh wait, there's space for me here. I am here. I deserve to be here. Whether they've got autism, CP, Downs, dark skin, light skin, crazy hair, not crazy hair, everybody has a right to be included.
In a country like ours, we're discussing topics like disabilities or neurodivergency can be shy upon or taboo.
You're being so
I don't want to
nice,
say
yeah.
the T word, but sometimes it's almost as if it's a taboo. Except now we're seeing more corporate organizations with their CSRs trying to do more when it comes to the autism organization, autism children and Down syndrome children, but there's still so much that needs to be done. That is not disputed. Your work is described as pioneering, and I can only imagine how it was for you navigating these cultural challenges to ensure that your daughter Simone is, represented and feels seen. Talk to me about the challenges.
Well, I never got the be ashamed memo that 99% of
I'm glad you
get.
did.
So like half the time, people always tease me because, oh, you're up in the clouds a little bit because of your height. But I'm literally, so a lot of the time, I don't get the social cues because I'm just in my own world. So it's kind of a blessing that I don't always read social cues because I didn't get the memo that I wasn't meant to be talking about it, that I wasn't meant to be, like for me, she is someone from when she was born I'm so proud of. So it's like, carry this, my baby around and she's gorgeous. And so I didn't think anything about, I'm not meant to talk about it. I'm not meant to say anything about it. And my family were not like that. And neither were my in-laws. Everybody just has loved both my kids and loved it. Like she's the excitement of both families. So I think that helped that I'm a little bad at reading social cues, but I faced a lot of vicious rejection when looking for publishers because they didn't just say no, but at least the Nigerian publishers, they said no and that I should be ashamed, that I shouldn't be saying such things, that no self-respecting parent is going to even buy this. And those were the kind of things I was facing, but I was like, you know what, I'm still gonna do it, So, and often people are really ignorant. So a lot of the time it doesn't come from somebody wanting to be wicked. It comes from ignorance. So you might say, oh, my daughter has Down syndrome. And they'll be like, sorry, sorry. I'm like, no. There's nothing to be sorry about. In fact, she's my blessing. God blessed me with Down syndrome. So it's about changing that perception, that narrative, that understanding, putting more things into mainstream media. One of the things I push is not siloing ourselves just in the special needs community. And that's why I think storytelling is so important, why I haven't chosen to do the brick and mortar thing of having a center or having a brick and mortar charity, but rather about telling stories, because stories can travel everywhere. They can come into the home, they can have all kinds of genres of stories or formats of stories, and you don't have to preach it. It's just a story. And so people are a little bit more open and taken a little aback by they actually like this, and this family can be like this, and this child can do, and it's not about what the child is able to do. Right? Everybody has their own abilities. It's about loving the child as they are. And just accept and love the child as they are. Then everything else is a cherry on top.
Right. I mean, I must say, Tonye, you are deservedly the Literary Advocate of the Year. It deserved recognition, which we're going to get into. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Literati here on News Central Television. My guest is Tonye Faloughi-Ekezie. She is the 2024 Brutal Papers Literary Advocate of the Year, and we're talking about her books. It's the Ugo and Sim Sim series, which is a proper representation of neurodivergency in children in Africa. We're going to a short break. When we come back, there's more. Stay here.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
In the heart of every city, in the corners of every community, stories are waiting to be told. Meet the women who redefine strength, resilience, and success. These are the women who turn challenges into triumphs and dreams into reality.
When you buy something I sell immediately, they are able to turn over on it, can easily turn it over so it's profitable.
While some may have formal education,
I have PLC. They mocking. They say, how can you leave the banking job and started hawking food?
others may have had little or none, but they are skilled, resourceful, and unstoppable. Join us on a journey to witness the power of resourcefulness and determination. Discover their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs.
I started small with 2x2 shop, but we are able to expand.
Street smart women.
And you're welcome back to Literati here on News Central Television. My guest today is Brito Paper's 2024 Literary Advocate of the Year, none other than Tonye Faloughi-Ekezie, and she is the author of Ugo and Sim Sim series, which we're going to be talking about just her inspiration behind the book, a representation of neurodivergent children, as well as Down syndrome in children with her book. Never been done before, especially when it comes to black children and children of African descent, and this is the first we've seen globally. So, of course, well deserved, which we're going to get into, Tonye. But let's talk about, your daughter, Simone.
Sim Simmer.
Sim Simmer. She's clearly an inspiration, credible inspiration for you to have written Ugo and Sim Sim. I mean, Ugo, sorry you don't get the shine if you're watching this, but Sim Sim is that girl, you know what I mean? Like, she's a star girl. But talk to me about, talk to me about the star girl that is Simone.
Yeah, so I think, in a way, it was a blessing to get the late diagnosis, right? So what happens a lot of at birth, or even while you're pregnant, you get the diagnosis and then they tell you, oh, this child is not going to do this, it's not going to do that, they're going to be a burden, and all that. So imagine like pushing out a baby and someone is just preaching negativity at you and your child. And so we are blessed not to have that, but we had the diagnosis of 4.5 months. So we had already bonded, and she was such a calm baby. Such an easy baby. I always say my son was born a grumpy old man, so he was he was a grumpy old baby. But I always say God knew what child I was having second, and so gave me him first, because he's just the most awesome caretaker, older brother.
Big brother, yeah.
Yeah, and he's so empathetic and so kind to other kids. And then we got this superstar, and she really does light up anywhere she goes. She must greet everybody, and if you try not to greet her, she will not allow it.
Ah, problem.
You must greet her back.
Acknowledge her.
Yes, you must. Don't you know? So, and she's just, she is a fighter. She sees challenges and she takes them on. So she really has that warrior spirit, that warrior fight, and plus she's a bit of an admiral on top.
No, not my girl. No, I don't know what you're talking about.
She's a fine girl, admiral. People say, I said, okay, you can't have the two. I said, you haven't met my daughter. So, that positive energy, that hard fight, hard graft, and then on top of it, she's just charismatic, right? And she's living her best life. So who am I to get down about Down syndrome? Who am I to say, woe is me, when the person there is happy and positive,
just living life?
And yes, my role is is to steward and care and make sure she's reaching her full potential, which we have to do through therapies and other activities, but making sure she has a social life and friends, and making sure she's supported at school and all those things. And she's athletic as well, so making sure we kind of hone those skills, because those skills really help in strengthening her muscles. Downs, they tend to be, those with Down syndrome tend to be very floppy as babies. They call them floppy because low muscle tone. Yeah. And so you have to work to build up their muscles. So even just us sitting here or standing or doing normal things, they have to make so much more effort to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's just a wonderful, wonderful human being to be around. She loves music, loves singing. She's a gifted artist. She's signed to the Children's Art Gallery Lagos.
Nice.
Yes, and we're our new website, we're going to be displaying some of her newest artwork on a website. Nice. We're making a superhero figure out of her. And of course, she's the name of our foundation, right? Simone's Oasis is named after her.
Simone's Oasis. It's amazing. Look, let's also talk about your self-publishing, because I'm being told we're pressed for time here. Your self-publishing journey has been one that, you know, it's definitely it's not for the weak. You have done incredibly well. You've ventured into self-publishing, published 5,000 copies on your own. That's no easy feat. And at the end of the day, landing a book deal.
Yeah.
The journey so far, the challenges.
I think the challenges is number one is that Nigeria tends not to look at children's books as anything of value. Number one. And we need to remind them that children's books are the most valuable books out there.
Right.
Those are the ones that you need the most investment in, because what they read, what they nourish their minds with, helps to inform who they become. And then the infrastructure for Nigeria is just totally Jurassic. And then the attitude, the very colonialized attitude of that. We only carry imported books.
Yes.
Nigerian books are inferior.
They don't sell.
And I went about proving that was not true. I did a hashtag Our Books Matter thing during COVID and went around, shamed all kinds of stores, carried all kinds of books around from me and other authors, because we started, you know, I'm one of the founding members of ACANE, the Association of Children's Authors and Illustrators of Nigeria.
Nice.
And so getting access to amazing quality books and understanding there were other people on the journey like me and who had to self-publish like me, but our books can sit on shelves with any books around the world that are for children. And so really doing the legwork. I did the legwork, physically going and talking to people and seeing people and dropping books, as well as shaming people on social media. And then as people started to kind of share, I found that parents have been the most supportive, because someone would, I'll be a friend of mine that heard what I was doing, I hear what I was doing, can you send me, let me see, and they would buy like 50, 100 and send to their children's school or give them as gift parties, and that's really how I began to make those sales. I did enter bookstores, but then you have to figure out the ones which are going to pay you your money and those who don't. And then I got, you know, I did well in the bookstores, but really the selling comes from the hard graft of word of mouth.
We have less than a minute. You've now been named the Literary Advocate of the Year by Bruto Paper. Congratulations to you. What does this recognition mean to you?
I think for me, it's an affirmation. Having signing with Reader Books this year, I'm featured in another article by The Guardian UK as one of the people they were just blessed to meet this year. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
I featured in Guardian UK. Just a lot of things are happening this year. I was picked for an American Express program for NGO leaders as well, which I was like, okay, this is actually happening. I haven't been in this echo chamber by myself. So I'm really kind of excited to see what 2025 will bring. It's just an affirmation and confirmation of what I already knew.
Congratulations. My guest today has been Tonye Faloughi-Ekezie. She is the Bruto Paper Advocate, Literary Advocate of the Year 2024. And make sure to go grab the book. That's all we're going to take here on Literati here on News Central Television. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Keep reading. My name is Judith Atibi. Bye for now.
News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.